MMA fights can get dangerous real fast. We mean, they're already dangerous the moment you step into the octagon, but if the ref isn't doing his job right, a whole new level of fanger just gets added to the game. So, join us today as we take you on a tour through 5 UFC fights that were stopped dangerously late. Let's get to it. First up, we have Paul Craig versus Jamel Hill. When you talk about late stoppages, in most cases it's when fighters are already knocked out, yet for some godforsaken reason, the ref hasn't noticed. When that happens, things usually tend to go south really fast. However, this one is special, mainly because it happened so recently, like literally at UFC 263, but also because it involves a submission hold that went on a little bit too long and left Jamel Hill brutally injured once it was finally stopped. You have to wonder, how do refs let this sort of stuff slip by like that? Alright, let's talk about the fight itself. So, to cut it short, Paul Craig managed to lock Jamel Hill into an armbar very early on in the fight. Now, losing right off the bat is always embarrassing, especially when it's the opening round, but after seeing what happened with Jamel, laughing at the poor dude is the last thing on anyone's mind. Once he got in the armbar, fans watched on in horror as Craig yanked his arm so hard that it quite literally popped at the elbow joint. At the moment, we all thought the man's bone had snapped. Thankfully, though, we found out later that his bone had simply been dislocated, but it doesn't end there. For some reason, the ref turned a blind eye to Hill's arm flopping around uselessly like a fish out of water and allowed the fight to go on. Craig took advantage of this, not his most noble moment, we dare say, and attempted to put Hill in a triangle choke. Now, Hill tried as much as he could to avoid it, but what can we say? There's only so much you can do with just one arm, man. How the ref allowed the fight to go on for this long is way beyond us. Next up, we've got Khalid Murtazaliyev versus CB Holloway. So, as we mentioned above, most fights that go on longer than they should are usually when a fighter is down and out without the ref realizing it, and it just devolves into chaos. This one though, guys, this one was just pure madness. Like, for some godforsaken reason, Herb Dean decided to let Holloway get beaten up like he was on some preschool playground and Khalid was his bully. Simply atrocious, if you ask us. We don't get how the UFC lets these refs slide like that. It's like they face almost no repercussions, and it's always horrendous to watch. In this scenario, the fight managed to make it to the 3rd round, so that's a step up from the last one. Picture this: Holloway is sprawled on the ground, clearly not in any shape to defend himself, and Khalid is just raining down an avalanche of punches over and over again. Eventually, the Doberman manages to crawl onto his side and cover up, again, not defending, just taking a beating. For some reason, Herb Dean, who's someone highly respected and held a very high stature in the MMA ref world, thought it was okay to just do nothing. We mean, you can see Holloway's lifeless body just being battered and his head just crashing on the canvas. God knows the brain trauma that man probably got after that fight. Herb Dean decided it was a good idea to let the fight go on for the remainder of the round. An insanely dumb move in our humble opinion. Safe to say, Holloway was beaten so badly, the guy couldn't even make it back to his corner when the bell finally rang. Coming up, we've got Francisco Trinaldi versus Jay Herbert. Okay, we've got a Herb Dean moment again. Brace yourselves, everybody, because this stuff is about to go south. And when we say south, we mean the South Pole. So, this one was so bad that Dan Harvey, a retired UFC fighter who was commentating at the time, got angry at Herb because it was the second time that night he'd messed up so badly. It kinda seems like Herb enjoys seeing fighters go nighty-night, considering the number of times he let stuff like this slide. It just gets worse by the minute. So there they were, 2 Goliaths, slugging it out in a lightweight bout in the UFC. Now, Trinaldi had already suffered a serious knockdown back in the 2nd round, but for some reason, the man had so much adrenaline pumping in his veins that he refused to stay down and ended up winning the fight. But you gotta ask yourself, at what cost, bro? Early into the 3rd round, also, yes, somehow the fights keep increasing the number of rounds the fighters survive by 1 for some reason. Anyway, Trinaldi decked Jay so hard that his entire physical form stuttered for a second before hitting the canvas. Hard. Now, Jay was already out cold. Anyone with a pair of eyes could see that. What ended up being even more disturbing was, even though the man just lay there like a rag doll thrown under the bed, Herb Dean thought to himself, "Nah man, I'm not feeling it tonight. Looks like I'm going to have to mess up your future for you and let you get some nasty injuries." Even Trinaldi was hesitant to follow up his incredibly powerful shot, but ultimately, he ended up landing a couple more elbow strikes before Jay was officially declared to be out for the count. It's kinda sad to see how much these guys have to go through. That too because the refs decide to randomly go blind. Now, let's take a look at Roy Nelson versus Antonio Silva. This one is a bit of a doozy. Bear with us, folks. So, this might be the only time a fighter assaulted a ref, and for good reason we might add, and got away with it, at least as far as we know. So, John McCarthy is one of those refs that you love and don't expect this kind of negligence from, but we guess it's too much to ask from, at this point, every ref in the UFC. Good old John decided to join Herb and Mario in the Bad Ref Club by refusing to end a bout even though the fight was so clearly over. It was laughable at how blindly the man was letting the fight continue. The fight itself was a wonder to many. Why? Well, you see, outside of the octagon, Anthony and Roy were good friends, and being forced to beat up your friend, especially after he's been knocked unconscious, kinda messes up the whole deal, don't you think? We're still surprised both of them even accepted the fight in the first place, especially considering how wild it gets inside the octagon. Ain't no friends when you're in that steel cage, bro. Anyway, so getting back to the fight, Roy managed to knock out Antonio in the second round with an inhuman uppercut and stopped. The world stood still, but apparently it wasn't enough for John McCarthy because he decided not to stop the fight. So, Roy, out of frustration, was forced to beat up his friend, and when John finally came to the end of the bout, he got a nice kick in the behind by Big Country, the perfect ending to our story. Finally, we've got Mike Perry versus Danny Roberts. Okay, so this one might be the sanest one on the list. The ref even felt bad about messing up and publicly admitted it. Usually, you're better off trying to get a cat to bark than these guys opening up about their slip-ups. But Mark Goddard is a real one for this because he decided to admit his fault and own up. So, in the spirit of that, we won't hate on the guy that much. Still though, you gotta hate it whenever this happens. It seems like it's happening every other event now too. Insane stuff, man. Alright, enough saltiness. We've got a fight to dissect. So Danny Roberts was the local favorite in this matchup, and everyone was hoping for him to come out and pull off a huge upset win. However, that didn't turn out to be the case, and instead he got kneed in the face, and one hook later, he was out stone cold. Yeesh, that's gotta hurt. Pretty lethal stuff, eh? But like always, it looked like Mr. Ref wasn't convinced, so Perry had to get in a few more brutal shots before they called it quits. Gives us shudders just thinking about it. Thankfully though, nothing fatal happened, so we can rest easy. Here's to hoping this type of stuff gets toned down because right now, too many incidents, man. Still, we love the UFC and MMA as a whole, so kudos to all the fighters out there. Keep buying them pay-per-views. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think we missed out on a major incident? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.